Lawyers these days seem to think that rights are important and they're good things, but that's not always what we see in the context of the judging of medicine and the way in which judges approach what doctors do. What we seem to see in those circumstances is much more interest in what the obligations that we should impose on doctors are and how we should define them, and in particular an interest in the idea that those obligations should be obligations aimed to encourage doctors to do the best thing as they see it for patients. Now you can link that with the idea of rights. There's a very important strand of thinking about rights exemplified by Joseph Raz that suggests that when we talk about rights, what we mean is that someone's interests are so important that they justify us imposing obligations on other people. And when we're talking about legal rights, it means that their interests are so important that the obligations we impose on other people are legal obligations. So Joseph Raz would say the whole point of talking about rights is to explain why people have duties. And what the court seemed to do in the healthcare context is spend a lot more time understanding what the duties of doctors should be. But where it doesn't feel very much like rights is that they tend to define those duties in terms of the way in which doctors would see them, not in the way in which the patients would. So the question about whether rights is a useful idea in the context of healthcare law is actually quite a tricky one. Descriptively, it doesn't seem that we use rights very strongly in this area, and other theorists are really quite suspicious of the use of rights because they see them as divisive and setting the right holder up against the obligation holder. Whereas what we tend to assume is the best outcome for the healthcare relationship is a partnership between professionals and patients, orientated to doing what patients need and what they want, but a partnership rather than the patients dictating things to the professionals. And certainly it's pretty hard to suggest that what we see in the healthcare context is a strong sense of rights. But that may not be a bad thing. It depends how far you think it's possible to define patients' rights in ways that will give them the appropriate things without unduly compromising the integrity of the health system and without skewing resources away from important policy questions into less important ones. And I tried to show you in the lecture how in fact we've often used rights to pursue policy agendas and in particular controlling what doctors do in ways that are not particularly closely related to better outcomes for patients. So rights may not be so much a good normative idea to do the right thing. They might just be a legal tool, and then it all depends who's wielding that tool, who's using that power and over whom they're using it. And maybe under the rhetoric of patient rights, what we're actually seeing is government control of doctors.